Alvarez. I was trying to, in the description of the show, put in all your accolades. And I was like, dude, is there a character limit? Because I feel like it's never ending. Like entrepreneur, winemaker, like fitness influencer. You're about to be a American Ninja Warrior champion. I totally believe that. Like, I mean, you also won the other fitness competition, the one with The Rock. I forget what that one
Yeah,
was called.
I got almost one. I came in second on that one, but I was the
Yeah,
West Coast champion.
yeah, just straight beast mode. I mean, it blows my mind to even fathom the amount of accomplishments that you have. So welcome. On Dangerously Delicious, we love to learn more about you, your businesses, what you do. We also like to take like live questions from anybody asking, and just really get to know more about you and your business. And then obviously, because it's dangerously delicious with the chubby hubby, we got to talk food. We got to talk desserts. It's my passion.
Definitely.
So definitely go that. So tell us a little bit more about Margaux Alvarez. And I know I've partaken, and actually many of the people that I know have partaken in your wine, which is incredible. Absolutely incredible. I'm pretty sure I bought like 3 or 4 cases of it from you. So yeah, it's incredible. So tell us more about it.
You're amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate the support. So I'm originally from Montana. Pretty much grew up there. Kind of have lived around many different places. Went to school in Hawaii. Moved to the Bay Area. Found fitness kind of relatively early in life. Loved being active, sports as a kid with my sisters, and then I ended up finding CrossFit in early 2011, and that was kind of I went in full fledged into that. I loved fitness, and that was kind of my solace. And having my sister pass away at a young age, I think I struggled a lot with losing her, not being able to protect her, save her. And so I think fitness was a way to work through my emotions and help me get through kind of some hard periods in life. And I ended up kind of competing right away within that fitness realm within CrossFit. And doing that, I loved the challenge. I love the physical effort. And along the way, I was starting to make home production wine with my family, just doing it on the side. And I thought, all right, well, my husband and I were talking about if we actually want to make a business and do this as a business, we need to go get licensing, we need to get paperwork. So to be able to do all that, we have to like put all the steps in the process to get that going. So we decided to do that kind of while I was competing as an athlete in the CrossFit space. And then decided to launch at the CrossFit Games, competing and starting my company and brand, which I don't recommend trying to do both at the same time. It is doable, but it is stressful. We'll say.
Sure.
But for me, it was all about blending fitness and wine together. You work hard, you wind down. At the end of the day, you enjoy a glass or bottle, depends how the day it is. But for me, it was all about celebrating the successes and embracing the struggles and making the most of every day because we're not guaranteed tomorrow, next month, next year. And so for me, a lot of people don't think of wine or alcohol that matter and fitness going together. And for me, it was two things that I found like that paralleled each other because you spend a lot of time in the gym working towards your goals. You also spend a lot of time in the farm and outside harvesting the grapes, crushing them, destemming them, and then having the wine age. And so those two parallels really hit home for me in terms of being patient in the process. And by the time you reach that goal of competing at a certain competition or placing on yourself on that podium or opening a bottle of wine, there's so much time that has gone into the bottle or the gym that for me was about enjoying it. And I just wanted to showcase and hopefully inspire others to go for their goals, whether that be in fitness, entrepreneurship, winemaking, career, etc. So that was kind of like the trying to condense the story shorter, a little bit, a little not so long. But I moved since then. I moved to Vegas in 2018 to get into distribution here in Las Vegas. I've been able to be successful in that aspect of getting into distribution in Vegas, Montana, and then Colorado as well. I'd like to be able to grow and expand nationally and eventually worldwide. It is a very hard, difficult industry
Sure.
for those that are aware of the alcohol or even beverage industry. But it's for me, it's been amazing because I've been able to meet a lot of people and share my story. And obviously, I find fitness is very comforting and an outlet for me, we'll say. And no matter how many frustrations and struggles I have, that kind of lets me get my frustrations out.
Sure. No, that's absolutely understandable. Obviously, we talked a little bit before this, and I'm super into fitness as far as lifting. I told you the struggle. I suck at eating. I mean, I'm really good at eating, just suck at eating the healthy stuff, right? Really,
Yeah,
really good at
exactly.
eating, but it's the healthy stuff that I struggle with. But I mean, I can absolutely respect that. Definitely love a good glass of wine, and your wine is top notch. I mean, I've shared it
Thank
with
you.
many people. Don't tell them where it comes from until after, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible!" And so it's been awesome also to follow your content with the working out. I know that for me, especially, I will find that the ones that I tend to gravitate towards are the stretching. Like I'll
Yeah,
come home from the gym and I hurt everywhere. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like how do I stretch the weird muscles, right? Like I'm all tight, tendons in the biceps or up in the shoulders. And I'm like, I have nothing. Like I have no idea. And I've been in sports my entire life. I did gymnastics for forever.
that's
So
awesome.
I was used to being super active, but as you get older, man, crap just is so much harder.
Yeah, I
Right?
agree. I agree. And I think people don't realize as you get older, as you sit more, as you start to, spend more time in positions maybe you don't want to, but you have to, that the body gets tighter and we don't stretch or we don't move as much and that flexibility starts to diminish. And I found, I mean, I just turned 38 a couple weeks ago and it's like even though I'm pretty active and moving, I know that if I sit for a few hours, my hips and back start to get tight and the injuries I've had with my back have come from too much sitting. And for me, it's like if I can at least showcase and share the information and knowledge I've had with like flexibility and stretching and the courses I've taken, hopefully it helps other people because it's like the longevity piece I think is huge, especially as you get older. It's more about lifestyle maintenance or
Yeah,
longevity, like
absolutely.
expanding that. So it's like, what can we do to do that? And for me, mobility, stretching, yoga, whatever it is to stay kind of mobile, if you want to think about it, can be
Sure.
beneficial. So yeah, I'm glad you found them beneficial and helpful. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do, honestly. It's one of those things that we overlook, right? Like, I think it's just when you think about going to the gym, and if you're not someone who's worked out before, not someone super comfortable, like the it can be overwhelming, right? Like people get nervous,
Hmm.
it can be super overwhelming. Um, and so the last thing that people think about is the stretching aspect because they're like, oh,
For
well,
sure.
I'm gonna go and lift weights, or I'm gonna go and get on a treadmill. Which, by the way, the treadmill I hate is the worst invention ever. I hate whoever invented this thing. It, cardio's never been my friend, and the
Oh, that's
treadmill's the
funny.
worst ever. But I think it gets that right. You're like, it's nutrition, now it's lifting or cardio, and then you're like, oh, you forget about the most important thing, which is the stretching, right? And
For
I
sure.
know just from lifting, just my normal routine that I do all the time, I'll find my shoulder is for some reason weird and sore, right? And I'm like, I'm lifting
Hmm.
the same stuff that I've always lifted, right? Like I may be increasing 5 pounds, but it's nothing crazy, And I'm like, all of a sudden, now my shoulder hurts, and I don't know why my shoulder hurts, or my back feels really tight, or my neck is funky, and I think that's
Exactly.
where really trying to showcase the stretching as the beginning part of starting to work out, because without it,
100%.
especially when you're old, man, like I hate getting old, but it's as I get older, I remember being 20 and going playing basketball for 4 hours and then hitting the gym and lifting weights, and
Yeah.
then you're like the next day you're like, I feel great,
Like I
right? And
feel
now,
fine with 4 hours of
yeah,
sleep.
exactly. And you go out and party and you got 3 hours of sleep and you wake up and you're like, I'm
Yeah,
great. I'm great. Now it's
exactly.
like, oh, I worked out for an hour. I felt it for a week. Like, I mean, it's it's brutal.
Yeah,
And
I
then I
think that
think,
was. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think the big other part that I've been learning is the nutrition side from the supplements too, right? Like
Hmm.
incorporating natural supplements like Cataplex B that helps with cellular regrowth and healing, or Saruta that helps with some of those things as well. And just getting some of these natural supplements make a drastic difference.
Yeah, I think, and just to like close on that one point, like the mobility and the flexibility, that was for me. It's for me. I've always found that beneficial. I kind of started to peel back the layers early in my CrossFit journey, I would say, with a friend of mine talking to me about my hamstrings and calves because I used to be a runner before. And for me, it was very eye opening. I think it's very beneficial. So that's why I find it so prevalent to share with people and say, hey, if you don't know what to do, like come to my channel or I'll showcase and I'll share. Like I put tons of videos out on YouTube in terms of mobility or flexibility or strengthening. And the intention is just to share that information because there's so much information out there that it can be kind of confusing. It can be overwhelming, but it's like, just take it one small thing at a time. And then to move forward into like the nutrition and supplements, I think it's huge. And I think a lot of people will maybe try to just like add things in like, hey, I'm going to take all these additional things to like replace or try to cover the the deficit that I'm at. And I'm like, that
Sure.
can be beneficial, but I tell people, I suggest, again, I'm not a registered dietitian, but I would just say, hey, from my experience and from working with other individuals, if you can start by looking at what you're putting into your body, right? Think of it as your car as, hey, I need to take gasoline, not diesel. If you're giving yourself diesel, it's gonna be very difficult to like operate and run smoothly. So it's
Absolutely.
like, if you're giving yourself whole foods in the sense of like real food, you're going to get a lot of the minerals and nutrients and vitamins and obviously the macronutrients you can get there. But if you can't, then start to supplement, or if you can't get protein in a day, which is what we're talking about, you could add in like protein shakes, or add in collagen if you're having some aches and joints with your, if you're mobile, with your like joints specifically in terms of like the tendons, and that can be beneficial. But again, if you have a wide variety of, we'll say, food in your diet or food in your nutritional content for the day, it can be helpful and beneficial. But I think also if you look at the quality of the food too, now like it's different than it was back in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s in terms
Sure.
of how it's being grown, etc. So it's crazy to think about that because it can be so overwhelming. But it's like, hey, like let's just start with like real food, like oranges you could get off of a tree, or beef you can get from a cow or whatever,
Yeah.
vegetables you pick out of your garden. But yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think too, like, you see people now, like the big thing is the cold plunge, right? Like getting in those ice baths and trying to get that recovery. I think is, I mean, it's the worst, but it's also amazing. It feels good after, right? I'm more of a hot tub kind of guy, right? I'd rather get in the heat than the freezing cold, but the cold does seem to work very well. And
Yeah.
even like red laser
Real.
therapy,
Hmm.
right? It seems to do super well as well with kind of just especially with strained muscles, right? It's that recovery so much faster. And I know I have a question for you because I have, right? I've worked with a couple of personal trainers. I've talked to two like huge people in the industry, and they both have different philosophies on this. So I'm curious yours. So the the debate was, should you do cardio before or after you lift?
I think you should change it up and do both, personally.
Okay.
So, and it's
Okay.
interesting because people, like, definition of cardio, are you talking like long, slow cardio, like lower intensity, or like some more higher intensity, elevated heart rate? Because I think traditionally cardio has been kind of deemed as like, 40% or so longer duration. Obviously, high intensity is, higher intensity in terms of how you're breathing or your pace you're going, but then the
Sure.
duration is a little slower. So I think in terms of you doing more traditional, longer study of cardio, and also I will note it all depends on your goal and what you're looking to achieve, right? Like if you're
Sure.
looking to go for a marathon run or row or half marathon or longer distance in event, having that longer
Never.
distance, no, not you,
Never me. That's never gonna be me. I can
not gonna
promise.
you.
No.
um, yeah, so I think it should be something that changes. Like variety is key in your training. To give an example is my kind of first year before I did CrossFit, I signed up for a couple 10Ks, a couple half marathons. I did them, and then as I was doing my third one, I started CrossFit. CrossFit, I went probably was 2 to 3 days a week of CrossFit classes where I started having, some more high intensity into my program, still doing my runs. I think the longest run I did was an 8 mile run leading up to my half marathon. But with the high intensity kind of sprinkled in there, I was able to PR by 5 minutes. Not saying that's all like the end all be all, right? There's so many different theories and approaches
Sure.
out there. Some like 100 ways to skin a cat. I think changing up in variety and constantly challenging your body is gonna be the most effective to have change or growth in your body. I know
Yeah.
we talked about nutrition too, like the fitness element, the movement is just one aspect, but I know some people say before, some people say after. And in my training, I would sometimes, do a long run, or I would do run intervals, and then I would lift heavy after, because in CrossFit it was all about the unknown. You didn't really know what you were going to get at the games. You could have a 2 mile paddleboard, you could have a 500-meter swim,
Mm,
you could have
sure.
kettlebell thrusters. So I think that variety is key. And again, different philosophies out there, different evidence. But for me, I've noticed one, finding something that's going to get you moving is most important first.
Sure.
And then
Sure.
from there, you're going to change.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think for me, the question was, is more from burning fat, like what's going to be the ultimate. And I've heard both ways, right? I've heard the start it before on like a fasted run to get in ketosis, and that starts the fat burning, right? And mainly what I'm doing is hit cardio, right? Like 20-25 minutes of hit cardio. And then, I was told ideally you would wait for 4 hours, eat some food, and then go lift. But I've also heard the opposite. So, I was always curious because I'm like, I hear both ways. I'm like, at this point, I just do it when I can. And
Yeah.
it's usually after. So I usually just do it after I lift. I find that, and I do it in conjunction with lifting, right? So I'll lift, and then as soon as I'm done with my routine, I'll just get on the treadmill and I'll start doing my HIIT cardio, which is just interval of running and slow jogging, running and slow jogging. So for about 20 to 25 minutes, and I do it then because the only reason I do it after has nothing to do with anyone telling me anyway. It has to do with I'm exhausted if I do it before and I won't make it through my lifting. So I have to do
Yeah.
it after in order just to
Well,
survive.
I would challenge you to change it up and do it the different, like ass backwards in a way. Try
Okay.
the first cardio and then lifting afterwards. It'll definitely be a different stimulus. I found that I know there's some studies out there. I know CrossFit did a study, and the other companies or other organizations have done some studies that the high intensity, like super short, like as fast as hard, like 100% max effort, and then after that, the possibility of the body burning possibly more fat or burning fat longer after that high intensity. So, for example, the study, I can't remember the study specifically, but if you look it up, it was with Julie Fouché. I want
Okay.
to say this was back in 2011, 2012, but they had her do Fran, which is 21, 15, 9 rep scheme of pull-ups and thrusters, which is like a squat and press.
Yeah.
And they were showing just from, because she had a mask on and doing this, like her ability to burn fat after it, or like longer duration of burning fat, was a little bit higher than just like traditional cardio. But again, the amount of research that could be out there, that should be out there, and again, it's all there's so much variety that it's like it's not like, hey, Monday, Wednesday, Friday you do this, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday you do that. And again, like I said, find what helps you move and be consistent with that. If you're looking for, in terms of if you're looking for fat loss, high intensity can be a great aspect of that, because even if it's intervals, right? Like work, rest, that can be great for promoting that. And of course the high intensity can promote like the naturally occurring hormones in your body, which will help with like muscle definition,
Sure.
fat burning, etc. But yeah,
Absolutely. So,
so you
question
let
for
me
you.
know when you switch it up. Let me know how that goes.
I will. I will. I mean, at this point, with doing the first form and getting into this competition, at this point, I'm willing to try it all because, hey, man, I told him like I go big or go home. Like I'm in it to win it. So I'm not
That's
going to
awesome.
join and not try to win. So
That's good.
I'm
Yeah, nutrition is one of the most challenging aspects because
yeah,
everyone is different. When I've worked with some people and advising some individuals, I could say, hey, like whole milk is a great post-workout component if you want to drink it in, add it into your shake, have it by itself. But if I tell you, hey, drink whole milk, and you're like, well, I'm lactose intolerant and I crap my pants, then that's not going to be conducive to them,
yeah,
right? So that's where nutrition is so different. But I feel like I've seen a lot of people and worked with some individuals where they've just changed just the nutrition aspect, and
yeah.
they've been able to see great gains with that. It is challenging, it is hard, but it's worth it in the end.
Yeah, and I'm definitely down for that. I'm excited to try, this competition and see what happens and see what the change is because it'll be a change no matter what. So,
For
but I do have
sure.
a question too, just from the CrossFit aspect, right? Like I've looked into it. I have had multiple people I know talk about it, but the other thing I've heard, and I'll be curious in your thoughts on it, are the injury regularity inside of CrossFit is so high, right? Do you find that do you see that with,
So I think it's hard because I've had someone ask me this a while ago too.
okay,
This individual had an agenda for sure. She was a little more specific in saying CrossFit causes injuries, and I think that's hard because the injuries I've had in CrossFit, the one was from a broken first rib, but that was from high volume repetition handstand push-ups, and that was because I was competing, not the average, class score or someone that does an hour
sure.
class a day. A lot of my injuries personally have come from afterwards where I've sat too long. Then I tried to lift, but it was the sitting duration of sitting that has not helped me. I think the biggest thing is looking at, there's injuries in any sport, in every sport, not to say there's not that in CrossFit, but the biggest thing is coming down to coaching, your form, and also like where are you going for your coaching. Like, not to say every gym's great. I would like to think every gym is great, every trainer is great, but if you have a coach that maybe isn't as attentive to you and your needs, or pushing and challenging that person to maybe something that's outside their needs, I think that's huge to be able to step back and say, hey, like, we're going to tailor this specifically for you. I've heard stories of people that maybe don't get the coaching experience or the coaching attention, which makes it unfortunate because then CrossFit gets that bad rap and that bad name. I know there's injuries in a lot of other sports as well. For
Yeah,
me, I think I've always told people, I'm like, hey, like, you know your level, and the coaches should be respectful of that. You know what you're capable of, what you're not capable of. I have seen people like, I used to do this as a coach. I used to do that. Like, that's great, but you haven't worked out for the past 5 years. We're going to put everything to the side, like pretend like you never worked out, and we're going to go to square one. I'd rather you work with a barbell or a PVC pipe or even a pair of dumbbells to get fundamentals down. So I think that's something where a
sure.
lot of people are like, oh, I'm scared, or oh, I'm going to get hurt with CrossFit. Like, you're not going to get hurt with CrossFit, but you need to be smart and attentive, just like anything else. Like, I'm not going to go and try to pretend to play basketball if I don't know how to turn and pivot and then I hurt my knee. Like,
Sure,
and again,
sure.
it's tough because people want to. I've seen this over the years. People want to take that and be like, "Oh man, CrossFit's bad for you." I'm like, "Well, why is it bad for you?" Like, if you take like the fundamentals of a squat, like, all right, well, I'm gonna go sit to the toilet. That's pretty much like a squat. Maybe you don't squat so far down because the toilet isn't far down,
Yeah.
but it's just pulling it back. And I think the biggest thing to look at is the relativity between intensity and the fundamentals. Like, if you don't have a lot of fundamentals, like scale back that intensity. If you have a lot of fundamentals, you're more comfortable with the movement, then you can increase that intensity. And intensity is relative to individual. So again, there's possibility for injury anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to be like just in tune with yourself and know that if you put the ego to the side, that can be a great avoidance of a lot of ego or a lot of injury, excuse me.
Oh, absolutely. I think so. Would you recommend then if someone was, say, new to exercise or working out? I mean, would you say that if they were going to get into CrossFit, because I'll be honest with you, the strongest people I know do CrossFit. So I mean, the people can say it all they want, but it's like the best shape people, the strongest people, like the healthiest people I know are all into CrossFit. So, but I think a better question would be more of like if you're a beginner, you're just getting to the gym, you want to start getting in shape. If you're going to do CrossFit, would you recommend always be like seeking out a coach or a gym with a coach rather than trying to do that yourself, right? Like anybody can go to a Planet Fitness and pick up, get on a machine or pick up dumbbells, but CrossFit's a whole nother level. And I think it's so important to have proper form. And if you don't know what you're doing, that I think that's where the injury comes in. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I went with a CrossFit gym, and the coach, I mean, he had me working out with just a barbell. And again, it's an ego thing, right? I was just like, okay, whatever,
Yeah.
right? But fixing my form on squatting and the stuff that I did, I was dead. And I'm like, dude, I pride myself on being able to crank out some weight and be able to and lift some stuff. And I was dead. He destroyed me, and I was lifting barely anything. I mean, literally as light as possible. But it was just the form
Yeah.
correction, in realizing, I guess your thoughts on that too. Like, I don't think I would jump into CrossFit without a coach. With how much he corrected my form and everything else. I mean, just curious your thoughts there.
For sure. I mean, I think of it as like if I'm going to go learn another sport, like I would for sure seek out a coach, whether it's a one on one or small group training. For example, I'm just starting to learn BJJ. I took like one session last week. And again, like I've taken a couple classes years ago with a friend, and like it's been I mean, over 15, 12 years now. So it's like for me, I know like I'm not going to go try to practice in a class by myself because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So whether it's CrossFit, BJJ, anything else, I definitely recommend a coach. I've found and I recommend people that go out there like, hey, I'm looking to get into CrossFit or I'm looking to start something new. I would recommend the fundamentals or course or a gym that offers fundamentals or an
Okay.
on ramp program where it's like, hey, maybe it's one on one or maybe it's a small group training, 3 to 5 people, but we're going to do 4 to 6 sessions depending on the gym you go to.
Sure.
But we cover most, if not all, the movements, and it kind of gives it where it's a little more one on one directive to like the movements, explanation of the movements, points of performance you need to be aware of. So that coaching aspect or that one-on-one aspect is very huge. I recommend it. And if people don't want to do that, like, hey, I just want to jump to classes, like nothing's wrong with that. But then as an individual, you should be aware of, does the coach that is coaching this class or classes, are they attuned to me? Are they asking me questions? Or they're like, hey, just this is what we're doing, have at it, and I'm going to be on my phone.
Sure.
I think it's very important. I mean, even as a coach, like if I'm coaching a class, like I'm in tune with each individual member that's in there,
Sure.
asking them, how do you feel from last week? So I think it's very important to establish that. And it's hard because CrossFit can be very intimidating. And I've talked to a lot of people that are newer and they're like, man, like I'm kind of intimidated. I'm kind of scared. I'm not sure. And for me, I'm like, totally get it, totally respect that. Like, we don't have to do any weight. We could just do, body weight movements, and that will for sure get you lit up because you can go faster with no weight, right? Less weight to move. You can go a little faster in terms of
Absolutely.
your repetitions. But I think it's important to find a coach or an individual, at least ask questions or have a conversation, reach out to the owner or the members or the coaches that are available. It's hugely beneficial. And I think, again, that applies to other sports as well,
Yeah, and I think I
or
agree
training methods.
wholeheartedly. I mean, it's something I've been looking into because right now what I'm doing is more from the bodybuilding because it's all PPL, right? Like it's a PPL standard routine, and it's 4 days pull and push and 1 day of legs. So it's more bodybuilder, catering to that versus functional strength, right? And which is what I'm trying to go for, right? I think as we get older too, you
Yeah.
need the functional strength, and I think that's where CrossFit helps. So it's definitely something I've been looking into a lot. I also know that, like I said, I got whooped the 1 hour I did it, and I'm like, man, I've been working out for 9 months now and consistently, and I feel good. I've got all this energy, and that was the most I've ever been whooped by a workout. It felt like it ever. I was like, oh my god, and
Yeah.
I had to stop him. He was like, hey man, come on, you're on your last set. And he's like, let's go. And I'm like, dude, no, I'm gonna pass out or puke, one of the two. So I gotta stop and I gotta breathe for a second before I finish this.
Yeah.
So it's definitely good stuff. Absolutely good
It
stuff.
is. And I think a lot of people, there was this kind of reputation in the beginning of the CrossFit years, early days, where it was like they had Pukey the Clown as the kind of their image or ambassador. And a lot of people saw that in the beginning. It was kind of like, ooh, it's hard, it's challenging. Like, I want to do that, And then as the years kind of evolved, people saw it as a turn off. They're like, oh, like I mean, I've even had friends that I grew up with. They're like, I really don't want to sweat when I work out. I'm like, that's fine, man. Like, do whatever you like. Like, honestly, moving and doing bodybuilding is way better than sitting on your couch and eating bonbons. Like, for me,
Absolutely.
over the years, I've evolved. Like, I was definitely that Kool-Aid CrossFit drinking girl in the beginning, and I've evolved over the years. I still love it. I love the community. That's something that's always brought me in. I love the challenge and the physical effort, and it's ultimately you against yourself. But I think a lot of people see, that Pukey the Clown, or they hear about, like, oh my God, it's too intense, I can't do it. I'm like, it's all relative. Like, if I'm doing a workout with thrusters and pull-ups, maybe you're doing just squats to a bench and ring rows, or bent over barbell or dumbbell rows. Like, everything can be scaled. And I think the biggest thing is that can go into anything else, like in powerlifting or even strongman. If you can't lift heavy bags or heavy stones, like, all right, cool, we can scale back the load, or we can scale back the movement. And again, it can be definitely intimidating, but as you get more comfortable and you get more understanding of the movements, then you scale that intensity. And that's where, like, all right, man, does people ask, like, does it get ever, like, any ever easier? And I'm like, well, things get easier, but that just means you can push yourself so it feels harder. But again, you can control that. And again, all depends on your goals and what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I think easier is relative, right? It's like it gets easier with the
Yep.
weight that you may have started with. 9 months ago, you know, from what I'm doing, right? Like 9 months ago, I was curling 35, 40 pound dumbbells, and now I'm curling 70 pound dumbbells, right? So, I mean, if I go back
That's
and
awesome.
do 35 pound dumbbells, it doesn't feel like that much, right? So,
Yeah.
but 70 is killing me, right? So, I mean, it's all relative as far as easy goes, but I think too, what most people don't understand or they miss out is they see someone like you and they're like, dude, holy crap, this chick is jacked, she's ripped, she's super muscular, like this is intimidating too, right? So you see all these people, you go into a CrossFit gym and you're like, holy crap, everybody's ripped and huge and muscular, and you're like, dude, this is not the place for me. And I try to tell everyone, right? Like, those are the people that are the most welcoming, right? Like the people that have put in
For
the
sure.
hours, put in the time, put in the blood, put in the sweat, put in that equity. Those are the people who are like, heck yes, dude, come and chat with me. I'll help you. Like, ask me what
For
you want to know.
sure.
I'll help you with form. You want me to hold this with you, spot you? I got you, right? And I think
Exactly.
that can be intimidating for people. And it's one of those things where I try to, encourage that. Like, guys, I promise you, the community aspect of this is why so many people get involved. Is you're
Yep.
nervous at first until you realize that all these people are also sweating, they're also hurting, they're also struggling, right? They're all in it
Yeah.
together. And like
100%.
the big strongest people, unless they're just a douchey person, they are going to be very helpful, right? And
Yeah.
I did that today at the gym. There's a guy who works out with me, and it's one of those things I always ask people now. I'm like, because he's my size. I mean, he's super ripped, right? And super ripped, probably 20-inch biceps. Like the guy's a monster. And I just asked him, like, hey man, what what is the big thing, right? That you're seeing from a fat burning perspective, like yours. I mean, we're built the same, but I don't look like he looks, right? And so and also just trying to figure out like so many people that are really big and really ripped are on so many products that testosterone or something stuff that I don't want to take, right? And so, but he, again, super big dude, super ripped dude, most approachable guy. I was just like, hey man, just curious, right? And he was super approachable,
Yeah.
super helpful, and so always encouraging to that as well. But I do want
Yeah.
to yeah,
And I to think of that, I mean, it's common. I want to say not common. I don't know from people, but like different industries, like there are supplements, meaning like not like protein supplements, that like that's part of the industry, that's part of it. But it's like within CrossFit, at least as a competitor, I was tested every year, multiple times during a year, because people are like, oh, like you didn't naturally get like that. I'm like, yeah, I'd spend 6 to 8 hours a day in the gym, 5 to 6 days a week, and now you're telling me no, I didn't get like that. Like, okay, cool. So you're just saying all my hard work didn't pay off. And it's like, for me, it's like, you know what, that you don't want to believe me, that's fine. I have nothing to prove. I put in the hours,
yeah,
days in, days out, and I got tested multiple times for like competitions and even out of the season. And it's stressful because, there's a couple times where I'll be traveling for seminars and like, hey man, you got to do a drug test. I'm like, well, I'm going to not be here. I'm going to be in Dallas. Like, all right, cool. We got to set it up there. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll go take a drug test before I go teach my seminar, and then I got to fly back. So, and it's tough because people have this idea or connotation like, oh, well, everyone does. It's like, well, no, if you want to assume that, that's on you. That's an assumption you're making. But again, different industries, different cultures. I know I would say more common in other competitions, of fitness competitions, specifically like the pro competitions, like the
yeah,
bodybuilding or the figure competitions. And that's fine. Like, again, to each one's goals, like, doesn't matter, whatever your goal is, that's who gives a crap about anyone else. Like, focus on your goal and what it is. Like, if your goal is to walk every day with 5-pound weights in your hands, awesome. Do you want to go take Zumba? Go for it. If you want to be someone that's lifting the heaviest weight and have the biggest lifts and go compete, awesome, go do your thing. And I think for me, I've noticed over the years, and as I've transitioned from being a competitive athlete into different within the CrossFit space, and then going different ways, Titan Games and Ninja and all those different other things. I think for me, it's like I see so many different walks of life. And I think when you're in the gym a lot, you see people that work out and put that as a priority. Then you go to like Walmart, or you go to Costco, or you go to the airport, for example, and you're like, whoa, it gives you
yeah,
perspective. Or like, maybe not as many people are working out as I thought they
yeah.
were. And that's what's like, hey, like I said earlier, like whatever gets you moving and off the couch, like go be it, go do it. That was kind of a
Absolutely.
tangent, but
No, I love it though. I absolutely love it. I totally agree. And I think it unfortunately can hit us when it's too late too, right? Where we're like, hey,
mhm.
you're getting a sickness that you could have avoided. Right. I ran into my own health scares, and that's why I got super into fitness 9 months ago. Was finding out stuff, and mine was hereditary, right? Like it was, I was just like, well, what the heck,
Yeah.
like mom and dad, you got to tell me. And so finding out, health scare stuff when that, and they're like, hey, man, good nutrition and lots of exercise will cure you of this. Right. And so it's just one of those things you're just like, hey, realizing that the younger we are, too, especially if you get in good habits, that it's going to change your life and only for the better.
100%.
And no matter what you're doing. Right. So I think, too, like there's got to be more of a focus on not just nutrition, but also just understanding like everyone's journey is different, and you don't get to look like a Margaux Alvarez overnight, right? Like you're not going to look like you. Someone
Yeah.
that's anyone starting is not going to look like you working out for 6 months. It's not possible.
No, it's
And I
not.
think that is the misconception that's out there, right? Like with fitness influencers, right? You see people, the crazy people, like the Liver King, right? And you're like, the guy doing crazy CrossFit stuff and eating raw meat, and he's like, "Oh, I'm all natural," and it's like, okay, now he's like on testosterone, right? Like, so it's like, these people, it's like you're not going to look like that, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. It especially doesn't
Yeah.
happen overnight. Like maybe in 5 years of working out all the time, right, and eating
Yeah.
the right stuff. But again, I think also trying to help people just realize like any progress is good progress, and you can get to looking like someone with you, like you, but you've got to put in all the work and effort you did, right?
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
so, I
And I've
everything.
had some people kind of say that. Like there was a lady years ago. She's like, "Oh my gosh, like so awesome! Like you look great." She's like, "I just don't want to look as big as you." I was like, "Okay, like you're not gonna get as big as me, however big you think I am." But again, it's perspective. Like I've been in the fitness industry for over 14 years. I started off as a personal trainer, and it's like it's been consistency over the time. And of course, there's ebbs and flows. Like I'm not training 6 to 8 hours a day now, but there was a period of time where I was doing that for multiple years on end. So to be able to say, all right, I want to look like you, or I don't want to look like you, like, don't worry, you're not going to look like me.
Yeah,
If you want to get muscle, you have to eat a lot of protein and you have to be consistent with your workouts and get sleep and recover. If you want to look like me, like, cool, like, awesome, good. Like, I can give you some tips and guides, but again, it's going to take time frame. And again, I think the biggest thing is like everyone's on their own journey. And
absolutely.
we're not guaranteed that you're going to be here next year, next month, but you can take those steps each day to slowly get closer and like enjoy the process because we spend so much more time in that process. The amount of time that we're going to go to the gym or we're going to prep our food or go to sleep, that's what we're spending. Like when you reach that goal physique, like, cool, you reached it, then what? Like that was a couple minutes, 10 seconds in the
Exactly.
mirror. What was it? Like if you don't have to fall in love with the process, but if you don't at least enjoy the process or
Yeah.
find enjoyment of that, then maybe reevaluate what you're doing or how you're doing it or why you're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think I try to tell people that too, right? Like you said, 6 to 8 hours a day, you're a professional athlete. A professional athlete. That was your life, right?
Mhm.
They no normal person looks like that without, you know what I'm saying? It's just not the thing. And so I've been asked this a lot because obviously I've changed. I put on a lot of muscle. I look a lot different than I did 9 months ago. And people are asking me the same thing. And I've just told them, I'm like, dude, I just work out every day. Like it sucks. I actually I hate having to wake up early in the morning to get to the gym before I go to work. It sucks. But afterwards I feel so much better. I'm always happier that I did it, but I hate having to do it. Right. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd love to be able to sit around, eat cake, and have a six pack. Right. Like, I'd love that. It'd be amazing. But then the reality is that's not the case. So, with that, I want to transition into my favorite part too, which is the good stuff, the desserts, the
Heck
wonderful
yeah.
food that doesn't help us. Tell me. So, I'll give you a little background on me. I'm actually a certified pastry chef. I went
That's
to Le
amazing.
Cordon Bleu. I worked in high-end restaurants, country clubs, bakeries. I had a bakery in North Carolina that I created everything from the ground up.
That's awesome.
And so I've always had a passion for food. I always tell everyone I built my body on desserts, and I'm very proud of my desserts. Not the body, but the desserts for sure.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's part of the reason I started Dangerously Delicious is when I had children, I stopped really living as a pastry chef, right? So you were working, I mean, I worked, let's see, 6 days to 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. I mean, I lived in the bakery, right?
Hmm.
Lived in the kitchen. And it just wasn't conducive to having kids. So I stopped that for a long time and I was just always making stuff for family or friends or holidays. And then I decided on Dangerously Delicious. I was like, heck yeah, let's just do a show. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start live streaming. I'm going to have guests on, but I'm also going to live stream baking. I'm just
That's
going to show
awesome.
people, like, hey guys, this is how easy it is. I know it looks difficult. It's not, right? Like, what's difficult about it is it's chemistry, right? Like, there's a
Mhm.
science behind it. And if you mess it up, the experiment goes wrong. Just like any experiment, it can go wrong pretty easy. And I said, the part of it is just trying to bring that into everyone else's kitchen, like the ease of what this is, right?
Mhm.
Ease of being able to do this kind of stuff. And so that's how Dangerously Delicious got started. It's just
That's
falling
awesome.
back into my passion and what I love to do. I always said if I won the lottery, I would open up a little 10, 12 seater that was invite only and just make crazy, food and wine pairings that you've never had before, right?
I
And
love it.
blow your mind, right? And so that's what we love to do. So now I get to test that out on people. We like to do, my wife and I like to do murder mystery dinner things. And so that's where I get to test out my desserts and my wine pairings with people.
I
I'm
love
like,
it.
hey man, this is what you're gonna get if you come. Is this old pastry chef is gonna throw his skills back into action and throw some unique desserts at you.
Heck
So
yeah.
so I have some videos up on YouTube. I've got them up on LinkedIn. I unfortunately I lost my camera guy. Um, he
Oh
moved
man.
on to doing other stuff, but I'm like, dang it. So now I got to figure out how to do this myself and start streaming more myself. What in the kitchen at least? That's the bigger thing is in the kitchen to be able to do it well. I told everyone I'm
Yeah.
so bad with cameras. Like I've had to have everyone tell me how to do any of this kind of stuff, so desserts. Tell me, what's your favorite, right? Like obviously you're super in shape. I can't imagine you eat a ton of sweets, but do you have a
Oh.
sweet tooth?
Yeah, so I actually do have a
Love it.
sweet tooth. So ever since I was little, I loved desserts. So it's like
Yes.
anything from like blackberry cobbler to butter pecan ice cream to like lemon tarts, coconut cream pie, banana cream pie, chocolate chip
Okay.
cookies and ice cream. So
Yes, I
I've
love it.
always loved desserts. Yeah. Things that I've never like I like a little bit of chocolate, like cheesecake is not necessarily like my go-to, but like any sort of like cobbler or like apple crisp, amazing. I love chocolate chip cookies, like I said, ice cream, donuts. I love donuts. Those I don't know if they really consider that a dessert, but
Oh, I do.
donuts like the dough crows or cronuts, like the
Okay.
croissant and donut combined together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a huge dessert fan. So I try not to keep sweets in the house because I'm like, oh, I'll just have a couple, and the next thing you know, I'm like, oh, I ate them all.
Yup.
So yeah, I love sweets, but I think I'd rather have something that's like a dessert that's a little more substitute versus like a sweet. If that makes sense.
Yes,
Like if I'm
absolutely.
traveling on the road, if I want like some those sweet tart ropes or something that's gonna like kind of curb my craving for that, then I'll have it.
Yeah.
But yeah, desserts. I love desserts. They're my
Yeah.
favorite.
I love that, dude. That's so awesome. I knew you were amazing. Like I think it always blows my mind when people are like, "Hey, I'm not a sweets person." I'm like, "No, you're a sweets person. You just haven't had the right sweets, right?" Like,
Exactly.
my goal has always been to not just change uh like your mind about whether you like sweets or not, but change your idea of what sweets are altogether,
Mm,
right? Like
I like
I
that.
want you to not understand what you're about to have because you think you know, right?
Yeah.
And so that's one of my favorite things to do. And we just had this. So my sister and my brother-in-law and all their kids moved from Maryland back to Michigan. I'm in
Okay.
Michigan, and they moved back to Michigan to be around family for the first time in like 20 years. So
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
I brought over a pavlova. I don't know if you've ever had pavlova.
I've heard of it. I have not had it.
So it's meringue and fresh whipped cream, and then I do grilled fruit on the grill.
Wow.
Wrap it in tin foil, grill up blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, and then top that into the whipped cream. It's
That sounds
phenomenal.
amazing.
Yeah, throw a little brown sugar on it because it's hydroscopic. It'll bring out all those juices. Mix
Yeah.
those juices in with the whipped cream. It's phenomenal. So I brought this over as a dessert. It was, I think, 4th of July, maybe. I also do key lime pie as my all-time favorite dessert. So
Okay, awesome.
I can
That
make
is pretty
those.
good. I like that too.
Yeah, so I have a video up on that too. That's one of my live videos is key lime pie. That was the first one I ever did because it's super easy, super fast, and it's so good.
Yeah.
But I did this pavlova, and I remember bringing it over. I'm pretty sure it was 4th of July, and my nieces and my sister were like, "I don't like meringue." I was like,
Oh,
"Okay."
yes, you do. Eat
I said,
it.
"I just want you to try it. I'm not saying eat a big piece. I'm not saying you have to eat a ton. I'm saying just try what I made, and if you still don't like it, you can tell me." And so
Oh my
now
gosh.
what's hilarious is we're getting ready for Easter, and they invited us over, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that'd be wonderful." And so we're going over for Easter, and they said, "Hey, Uncle Mark, we were wondering, could you bring pavlova over?" So I blew their mind, right? What they had
That's
had is
amazing.
they had the meringues from Trader Joe's or wherever, like those pre-made ones. They're disgusting. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
love you, Trader Joe's, but you're disgusting. Like the meringues are gross. So
There's
like,
nothing that you can replace with real fresh made.
no, and it's got to be the right amount of crispiness with chewiness. And if you don't
Hmm.
have the chewiness aspect to that meringue, it will ruin the entire thing. Like nobody wants to bite into a piece of chalk, essentially. That's meringue with no
Yeah,
chewiness, right? And
exactly.
so it totally blew their mind. They were like, "Oh, this is meringue?" They're like, "We had something else." I'm like, "Yeah, you had gross meringue." Like, they're like,
You're
"This
like,
is
whatever you
so
had, it
good."
wasn't that.
Exactly. So now, that's been my philosophy with desserts in general, is just really wanting to change people's perspective on this. And no matter what it is, right? Like, there's so many things, even just trying um, dessert. So teaching people how to try chocolate, right? Like,
Mm,
eating chocolate, there is an actual step and a process to eating chocolate. It's very similar to trying wine or trying coffee, which most people don't understand how to taste wine properly, right? Like, there's a
hmm.
reason you're looking for the legs of the wine, right? There's a reason you're
Yeah,
spinning it to incorporate air. You're also inhaling as we're spinning it, right? To
yeah,
breathe in all this flavor. And when we drink it, we're swirling it around, right? To really get that development of flavors. And so people don't understand that is the same with chocolate, right? With chocolate, you're supposed to take chocolate there's a couple of aspects to it. Is one is it's shiny, and when it's shiny, it means it's tempered well. And we're talking
mm,
about real chocolate, not like Hershey's or something, right?
yeah, like the
Like
real,
that's,
yeah.
that's fake, right? So we're talking about real chocolate. So real chocolate, you start out with the look of it. It should be very shiny. It means it got a great temper. It hit those stage 4, stage 5 crystals, right? And then it should snap. If it
Ooh,
snaps, and you should hear a snap, it was tempered perfectly and the quality of the chocolate is great. The next part of it is you rub it between your fingers, right? And
interesting.
the reason is you're starting the melting process in the chocolate. So most people want to
Mm,
chew and bite and chunk on chocolate, right? And that's not how you're supposed to do it. And the reason you melt it is for the smell. It's the same concept
interesting.
as wine. So we melt it between our fingers. We're getting the smell, and then when you put it in your mouth, it's that same. You can either let it sit on your tongue, or you roll it around just like you would wine. And the reason is
Yeah.
it should melt just by the temperature of your body, of your mouth.
Hmm.
That's how you can
Yeah.
tell if it's properly done chocolate and it's good quality chocolate. And good quality chocolate should also increase in flavor as you're eating it. And so
Interesting.
it's those types of things that people don't think about, right? And it just brings a
Yeah.
whole new
Unaware
game
of
to
it.
it, right? And it's so hard to go from that. And you're like, oh, I'm not going to sit and chew on this because you don't really get the full effect of it. And it's like a good wine. Like, you
Yeah.
don't get the full effect of a good wine. Like, if you want $2 Chuck, that's what you just you drown it. But like, if you're gonna have good quality wine, you want to enjoy it, smell it, taste it, like see the buildup of the flavors. And then if you're really
Hmm.
good, do the same process with the chocolate and then take a sip of that wine. And then you should see the
Yep.
explosion of those flavors, right?
Oh, for sure.
It,
100%.
and that is what I love to bring in. And I think that's where this passion all started, was just trying to change that, because I grew up um, in a huge family. I have 16 siblings. I have 10 brothers and 6 sisters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's a ton of us. And one of the things that we did was make food, right? Like, our family, my mom's family, Italian Hungarians, like, they're huge people, giant sized people, and everyone loves to eat. And I think one of the earliest memories is the baking aspect. Like, my mom loved to make and bake. And so I took it a step further, right? Like, and I started getting into it when I was young. My grandmother owned a Cookies by Design. I don't know if you've heard of them. Um,
Mm-mm.
but Cookies by Design does like cut out sugar cookies, and they're really nicely decorated. And so I got
Yeah.
into that when I was really young because my grandmother owned the shop. And so I was like, okay, well, I can go work there illegally at like 13, 14 years old and start decorating cookies and baking and learning this. And that's where I fell in love with it, all of that. Right. And
That's really rad.
there's a pastry chef. I mean, he's a pastry chef for sure, but more of a chocolatier than anything else. If you ever want to watch someone that's so incredible, his name is Amari Gashan. He's out in Las
Okay.
Vegas. Um,
Okay.
yeah, his pastry school is in Vegas. So when I was just
No
there, I was
way.
just in Vegas. So I was out there with a company doing a company retreat, and then my wife and I spent some time out there for our anniversary. And
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah, so we were just there, and I mean, we're not big gamblers, so we spent all our money on food and desserts, and
Yes, a lot of good food and desserts out here.
yes, I'll tell you, we went to Spago in Spago by Wolfgang Puck. It's inside the
Yep,
Bellagio. Blew my mind. Like, it was so good. The service was top notch. The view was amazing. The food was amazing. Like, just it was the best by far. And we went to a
cool.
lot of different places, and it was top notch. So
That's
I don't
awesome.
know how close
I've
you
heard good
are.
things about it.
I don't know how close you are to Vegas, but definitely hit it up if you're ever
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like 20 minutes from the strip,
Oh, geez.
depending on traffic, so super close, yeah.
Yeah.
But I've gone down, like, I've never been to that restaurant, but I've heard of it, but I've been to, for sure, some, like, handful of places. I have my wine at Barry's Prime in Circa, so
Oh,
I'll go down
okay.
there and promote the wine and do stuff and events there. But, yeah, the food and, like, the service is amazing at, like, any of those places. I mean, top notch, so when you go there out or you go out enough, you're like, "Oh, man, it's gonna kinda get spoiled with all this nice service and food."
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what's your favorite restaurant out there?
Oh, I mean, Barry's been like for steakhouse, it's phenomenal, like amazing. I love the ambiance as well. It's very kind of like 19 kind of 50s, kind of a
Okay.
speakeasy vibe
Okay.
as well. It's underneath, so it's downstairs, kind of in the basement.
Sure.
Very dark lighting, but amazing food. And depending on what you're trying to get, like restaurant wise, there's some really good places. Mandalay Bay has some. The Foundation Shop has some really good food as well, more like American cuisine. There's also a French
Sure.
restaurant, Bordeaux, which is in Aria. They have like some French cuisine, really good food. So it's like it's tough because there's like so many different places. Yellowtail in the Bellagio actually has some really good sushi, like
Yeah.
amazing, just like specialty rolls that they have there. But it's tough. There's so many good places. Like I don't go out on the strip often, but when I do, I try to go to those places.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we did Vanderpump. I mean, super
I've heard of that one. Never been
ostentatious.
there.
Yeah. So super ostentatious, right? Like over the top with like the decor and everything. And I think that's the idea from it. Food was
Yeah.
okay, but it was like the ambiance was. I mean, you're never gonna find that anywhere else, right? Like the
No,
ambiance is unique.
for
So that was
sure.
super cool. And we did Hell's Kitchen, and that was good. And we did Mon Ami Gabi, and
Yeah, I've heard amazing place things about that place.
it is amazing. And from breakfast to dinner, phenomenal. And I think one of the cool things is like, so I eat gluten free,
Okay.
because I have gluten intolerance issues, and so I try to find anywhere that's more gluten free,
Yeah.
especially for breakfast. It's hard, right? Like when I can find a place where I can actually get a pancake, I'm like, oh my gosh, or a waffle. I'm like, what is happening right now?
That's
Um,
funny.
and Mon Ami Gabi has all of it, right? And they're well known for their gluten-free French toast. Is like
Oh,
they're
really?
like world renowned for their gluten-free French toast. So I
I
had
didn't
it.
know
It lived up to it. It was insanely
that.
good. But yeah, I think one of the cool things too is just trying all the different desserts at all the different places. Like I want my mind to be blown away, when I go to these things, and I'm
Yeah.
so picky when it comes to desserts, just because I know, right? Like that's what
Yeah.
happens, and it's the little things, right? Like I serve key lime pie and it's super tart, but it's like, hey, I gave you the smallest star of whipped cream. It's like, okay, understanding why you put whipped cream on it to begin with, right? Like, what's the purpose of the whipped cream, right? And I think that's the aspect where it's like that's what I love is like trying to teach people too the why behind some of the dessert choices because like you grow up
Yeah.
and you're like, hey, I have apple pie and it's the same stuff all the time. Yeah, but
Yeah.
why is it like that? Like, what is the difference? What's in the dough? How's the dough made, and why is it made that way? Right? Like, there's a reason you make a crumbly dough so it melts in your mouth when it's combined there, but also has some strength to
Mhm.
it. And so with key lime pie, because I'm like super uber, that's my favorite, right? I love it when it's super tart, but you have
Yeah.
to have enough whipped cream because the whipped cream mellows out the sharpness
That
of the
makes
tart. You
sense.
still get tart, but it will mellow out that sharpness, right? That's why you want
Yeah.
that whipped cream because it mellows out the sharpness of it. So if you don't have enough, you just get hit with bitter, right? Like the aftertaste is bitter. And you don't want an aftertaste that's bitter from a dessert. You want it to come off
Yeah.
sweet. It should be
Exactly.
sweet and smooth. And so that's every time I'm always critiquing dessert. So my wife hates it because she's like, hey, what the heck, dude? Like, let's just gotta do it. She's like, if we're gonna get
Just
dessert,
enjoy
you
it.
can't say anything. And I'm like, look, I'm enjoying it. I'm still eating it. I'll still eat the whole thing. But
Yeah.
I also want to critique it, like what would I do different? If I was making it, what would I do different? So
Exactly.
I think one of the fun parts is that now that uh the Dangerously Delicious has actually come up. It's actually, I put up a post, and I don't know if you saw it on my LinkedIn, a poll asking people like, which of my content do they like seeing the most? And
Yeah.
funny enough, because I'm actually a leadership and coach consultant for like operational efficiency. I've been
Awesome.
doing that for a long time, and I mean, my whole career has basically been operational efficiency. Even inside of a kitchen, it was like making things faster, making things better, improving the process. And so I posted up there, hey, do you want to hear leadership coaching stuff? Because I'm also a certified NLP coach, and trying to work on my master's NLP certification.
It's
Um,
awesome.
so everyone was like, no, we want to hear more about baking a pastry. So I was like, hey, man, that's what I can talk about the most. So I'm fine with that because I can talk about it for forever. But I just
Yeah,
thought it was interesting, right? Like that's what the people want to know. That's what, the content people want to see is just the recipes, right? Like the recipes,
for
the
sure.
tips, the tricks. Like, hey, you're working on something, it's failing. Why? Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, man, ask me. That's what I want to know. Like, ask me and I'll help, and
Well, I
that's what
feel like that's
Dangerously
a
Delicious.
it's intriguing because I think it's something not a lot of people know, like to cook amazing desserts or like recipes for that. So it's like I could see where people same thing with like nutrition and food, like an amazing recipe for like some steak or a side
Yes.
dish. So that's really cool that you're doing that because I think there's that interest in, like you said, that's what they want to hear more of. So it's like, all right, do more about that. I think it's also
Exactly.
a lot of people do find a lot of comfort in food, and I think especially if it's like families where like they're baking together or couples or friends, whatever, like you're just baking together, it's an experience. And I think people want that. It's like, being able to go out for a glass of wine or share a bottle of wine, talk story, whatever it might be. I think people yearn for that. They want more of that. So same thing with the desserts. They want to learn how to cook or they want to learn how to bake and they want to learn how to do something that they can celebrate together. That's really
Yeah.
cool.
No, I think that's cool, and actually kind of gave me an idea now that you said that too. It's like I wonder if someone wants, hey, I'll live stream with them. If they want to do a cooking class, I'll live stream and teach them how to do it.
For sure. Yeah, that's
It's not a
awesome.
bad
I bet
thought
people would totally
process.
do that.
Yeah, it's not a bad thought process. I love it. See, you're giving me
Yeah.
business ideas here. I think, I mean, that's why I started the channel to begin with, right? Is I love doing that. I love sharing that passion because it is my
Yeah,
passion and I love sharing that. And I think people get intimidated with desserts, right? And again, it's the chemistry aspect of it, right? Like
for
it can be
sure.
intimidating. I tell everyone the reason your stuff messed up, like the reason it didn't work, is because you're using measuring cups and measuring spoons, and it all has to be weighed. Like that is it.
Oh,
That's the
interesting.
biggest difference between a successful, most of the time, but the biggest difference between a successful dessert and a non-successful one is a measuring with a scale and measuring by weight, right?
Mm,
And especially if you want to get creative, right?
yeah.
So it's a 1 for 1 with liquid, right? Like fluid ounces, you can change water for lemon juice. You can
Mm,
change, lemon juice for soda, right? Like if that's what you wanted to do, like it has to be the liquid that changes, right? Like you can change
yeah.
maple syrup for honey for molasses, right? Like the
Interesting.
same viscosity levels, right? You can change those things. Understanding like you can make powdered sugar. Like this is one that always blows everyone's mind is that granulated sugar and powdered sugar are the same thing. One has just been processed, it's been ground down 10 times, like
Yeah.
times more than the other. It's called powdered sugar is called 10x sugar because it's just been 10x. It's been 10 times more ground. So I try to tell
Yeah.
everybody if you have granulated sugar, but you ran out of powdered sugar, just take a cup of the granulated sugar, throw it in the blender, and you will make powdered sugar again. Like it's
That's amazing.
yeah, I mean, but it's simple stuff like that, right?
Yeah, for
So
sure.
it's the fun things like even fixing. I was laughing because my mother-in-law, for my wife's entire childhood, entire years before I met them, she's like, we don't let my mom make mashed potatoes. And I was like, what the heck? She's like, they turn out sweet. I was like, what the heck? And she's like, doesn't matter how much garlic, sour cream, butter, whatever, it turns out sweet. And I was like, okay, let me see what you're doing. Let me find out if I could diagnose what's going on. It took me 20 seconds. She stored her russet potatoes in the refrigerator.
Oh, really?
So what happens is the starches break down in the refrigerator and turn into sugar.
Huh. That's interesting. So it's like sugar, not
Yeah.
potatoes.
So that's why they were sweet. And I was like,
Oh my
yeah,
God,
dude.
that's wild. That's
Yeah. She's like,
funny.
well, I've just always stored them in there. So yeah, but I mean that's the fun things, right? Like those are the
Yeah.
exciting things. Those are the fun things. And but I will wrap this up because I will keep going and I know we're out of time now. But I just want to say thank you so much. I know that this is streaming. I've seen a bunch of people asking me questions on LinkedIn. I don't know what happened. It didn't, it's streaming on LinkedIn, but some
Okay,
and
awesome.
on YouTube. I can see them both on my channels, but for some
Okay,
odd reason, it wasn't letting people in. So I can see like 1,000 questions right now, but it's showing nobody. But I can see all the questions. So I will
awesome.
send those to you too if they're specific for you. But I also want to
Cool.
tell people about you. Make sure they know you. I'm gonna absolutely recommend everyone follow Margaux. She's absolutely amazing. I follow her content daily. There is very few people on here I actually look forward to their content daily. Margaux is one of them. It's
Thank
usually
you.
workout related stuff. I'm always looking and always for the wine, right? Like I haven't seen a
Yes, of
lot of
course.
your wine stuff anymore. And I
Yeah,
keep
so I'm all
looking.
out of inventory right now, which I know people are like, "Oh,
Ah,
that's great." I'm like, "Yes, it is good, but I wish I had more inventory." So I've been working. I had to put off the next production a little bit. Bottle prices went up to like $1.50, which doesn't seem like a much, but they used to be 75 cents, so 100% increase
yeah.
was a little detrimental. So I'm holding off. Hopefully later this year I'll be able to do the next production. I still have wine aging in barrels, and so I need to bottle them very soon here. So I'll definitely keep you posted once I get more wine out. But
That
I
is
appreciate all the
awesome.
support.
That is awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure and an honor to have you on here again.
Thank you for having
Like
me.
I said, you have more accomplishments than I think characters exist in the description. It's incredible to meet someone like you, and like I said, daily I get excited to see your new content. So keep on
Thank you. I
posting, and
appreciate it.
thank you so much, Margaux, for joining.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, take care.
Thank you. Take care.